Thank you to the organizers for pulling this conference together, and thank you for having my paper Immersive Labs in Artistic Research and Pedagogies at the conference. In the Immersive Laboratory, University of Malta, acronyms ILUM, as well as in the Visual Narratives Laboratory, acronyms VN Lab of UJ Film School in Poland, researchers, artists, filmmakers investigate and research into and create different kinds of immersions. ILUM aims to create content production pipelines to allow artists, researchers and scientists to concentrate on the creative, investigative aspects of their immersive works. Researchers from Malta and Poland are partnering with different laboratories across Europe, the Immersive Pipeline at Goldsmiths, University of London, the ICST's Immersive Lab at Zurich, University of the Arts, Switzerland, and the Spatial Media Group SMRG at the National Kapodistrian University of Athens, Greece, allowing for researchers from ILUM and VN Lab to gain insights with state-of-the-art immersive experiences, in brief IX, artistic research and pedagogies. Partners of the original Immersive Pipeline project from Goldsmiths University of London included some of the most relevant pioneer institutions in this field, such as Société des Arts Technologiques, Institute for Sound and Music, Recombinant Media Labs, Sonic Womp, Garage Cube, publisher of MadMapper, and Module 8, Derivative, publisher of Touch Designer, NSC Creative, UK distributors of Front Pictures. Immersive Pipeline core participants included Luc Couges, SAT, Nod Humon, CINE Chambre, Dr. Carl Doing, Nick Mehan, Hexadome, Paul Montbry, NSC Creative, François Wunschel, MadMapper, and Professor Julian Enriquez. As a brief introduction, I would like to show a brief video explainer from our partners, the Immersive Pipeline, Goldsmiths University of London, initiated by Professor Atao Tanaka.
Fascinated in how moving imagery can create poetry or poetic moments. Of course, this is wonderful because you create naturally a big, immersive, poetic moment.
While digital technologies are relentless in pursuing novelty, a century of development in the history of film, expanded cinema, and the transformations of narrative have introduced publics to and created traditions of immersive audiovisual storytelling. On the development of this field, we have witnessed constant former changes in the history of digital video and digital sound, linked to the evolution of computer graphics and the advances of music and visual arts. These new practices and forms of presentations connect with the pre-cinematic inventions such as Phantasmagoras by Georges Méliès's illusions that led to many narratives and technical developments at the end of the 20th century. Throughout the last century, we will witness the transformations of new mechanical to digital area, entering the 21st century with a new technological media landscape, the digital and immersive culture. Notions of reality and space has broadened experimentally through digital media. According to Marshall McLuhan, our senses and experiences are expanded by the media that surrounds us, and that through everyday use our perceptions and consciousness has incorporated these mediations naturally and by osmosis. With computer-based stereoscopic display technologies have come virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, as well as mediated reality and diminished reality and other new terminologies that arise as new technologies appear. These related concepts have been developed to a point that the limits that separate them become increasingly invisible. They represent forms of immersive experiences, in acronyms IX, as digital media objects. They can exist in variable forms, potentially in infinite versions. These definitions are different points along a spectrum of IX computing, spanning digital and physical space. Dr. Caroline discussed the history of expanded cinema as a precursor of the current wave of immersive experiences in spaces. Buckminster Fuller carried out early experiments with domes and immersive architecture in the 60s and wrote the prologue to Gene Youngblood's Expanded Cinema in 1970. That seminal text introduces the concepts of intermedia arts and multimedia culture as a new artistic context for film and video. These pioneering concepts were later expanded upon in the UK at the London Filmmakers Cooperative. Fundamental events on the history of immersive experiences are the Vortex concerts held by Jordan Belson and Ari Jacobs in 1957 to 1959 at the Morrison Planetarium, San Francisco, and Dan van der Beek's Movie Dome Theatre at Stony Point, New York in 1965. The Expanded Arts Diagram, 1966, by Georges Macunas, included expanded cinema and many interrelated art forms, from verbal theatre to anti-art, and other linking cinema and other art forms. Van der Beek, who was a student of Buckminster Fuller at Black Mountain College, imagined that theaters would be connected via satellite transmission and that images will be sent across the network, connecting people all over the world, helping them to understand each other and eliminating the reasons for war. At the Movie Dome, a dome theater built by himself with multiple projectors that surrounded the audience. The novelty of the situation required Van der Beek to give directions to the audience, explaining them what will be the best way to experience the event. At the Movie Dome, the theater, the audience was lying on the floor with their feet towards the middle of the space. Van der Beek was going around the space performing with slide projectors that completed the multi-projection experience, while he was also drawing on overhead projectors. This positioning of the audience in the space introduced a new concept of experience. These same design ideas will set a precedent and develop further into current immersive spaces, such as the CINE chamber. Sound and image constantly surround us. Their presence is ubiquitous, therefore we are all part of an immersion, whether or not we are aware of it. IX introduces audiences to digital journeys where they are transported through the content of, for example, a science project, an architecture simulation, a documentary, an art installation, or a performance. They take on forms of audiovisual production to compose mediated enveloping environments for cinematic storytelling on multi-channel screens and surrounded sound happening in physical or virtual space. The IX culture connects with new audiences experiencing multimedia content at high speed. VR headsets provide an individual simulation of total immersion by delivering high-resolution audiovisual experiences. In isolation, any reference to the physical space is transposed to the virtual space. Body space and time awareness decreases as there isn't any contact with any external environmental factor. In contrast, the production of IX in a physical audiovisual environment connects us with the social experience and its collective expansion through technology. The event becomes of a shared IX with multi-channel video and surround sound composition. In these venues, such as the Illum, BNLab, Immersive Pipeline, and Immersive Lab, we can experience without the need for VR eyewear or headphones. At the Zurich University of the Arts, the ICST's Immersive Lab, in brief IL, it is an interactive sound and video space. In a ring-shaped arrangement, it presents digital media generated in real time in a panorama projection with surround sound. The Immersive Lab was initiated by Dr. Jan Schacher and Dr. Daniel Bisig. And the entire surface of the installation is touch sensitive and allows for visitors to interact and influence the contents. The arts-based research and public-facing expertise of the ICTS's Immersive Lab at the University of Zurich addresses the following topics. 1. Non-linear narrative. The use of real-time generated images, sounds and reactive simulation systems allows for the investigation of novel non-linear forms of narration in IX formats. Not all platforms offer the same manner of dynamic form generation, but all provide the basic freedom of an on-the-fly decision making. Second, interactivity, interaction design paradigms. The platform provided at ICST in Zurich allows for an almost intermediate interaction with bare hands by a large number of viewers. Taking this starting point, the question of interactivity, reactivity, autonomous or semi-autonomous behavior within the different media paradigms gets explored and applied. Third, a fundamental question of immersion and fluid media. The nature of immersivity of the different IX platforms is approached by examining the same contents transported, made interoperable between the available techniques, example from VR headset to dome projection space, etc. I would now just briefly show a showreel for the Immersive Lab, which was produced this year, so the showreel for 2020, giving a bit of feel what has been produced at the Immersive Lab at ZHDK. For the last part of this paper, I will discuss some interdisciplinary applications of immersive labs, and I will start with cognitive science. As at the University of Malta, the Faculty of Media and Knowledge Science, we work together with cognitive scientists as colleagues between digital artists and cognitive science. Besides artistic research, the ILUM project is also looking into the field of cognitive science. For the beneficiary researchers, the key element is that the subjective experience can be challenged using new technologies and IX media that induce perceptual bodily illusions. Such illusions are interesting to study for cognitive neuroscientific research of self-consciousness and provide an excellent way for communicating and explaining our scientific questions. Work in ILUM implements the experimental conditions for visitors to experience these bodily illusions and provides the public with a better understanding of the fundamental mechanisms of self-consciousness. This type of application provides an essential guide for further close collaborations across disciplines. Another field is that of historical sites and cultural spaces. One major aspect of ILUM offers the engagement with Maltese cultural and historical sites. Museums are often sites of knowledge and memory, heritage and culture. Museums and historical sites in Malta are also publicly funded institutions that have a social responsibility to reach out to a wide range of demographics. However, participation in culture is often significantly lower among those from a lower socio-economic background. There is strong evidence of arts and cultural intrinsic social and economic value. Furthermore, even when visiting museums and sites of cultural heritage, many visitors only engage with the star exhibits, missing out on other equally important, if less celebrated or spectacular elements of the exhibition, either because they do not have an incentive to visit certain parts of the exhibition or because the items are hidden in the storage. This can lead to educationally limited visits of cultural and heritage sites. The fine arts museums' collections include artifacts and works of art prized by international museums, but which are less known by the local community, and thus a good reason for ILUM to apply the immersive technologies in the museum contexts. According to C. Walton in his text Museums for Visitors, Audience Development, a Crucial Role for Successful Museum Management Strategies, written in 2016, I quote, "The process of establishing museums for the many goes hand in hand with the transformation of museums which change from being product-led to audience-centered." And another application is that for awareness raising around the migration crises. Another local research project which benefits of the ELUM project is the research platform for migration at the University of Malta. Besides the Immersive pipeline, University of London also hosts the Forensic Architecture Agency and the Forensic Oceanography project, with which we partner for the research platform for migration. Forensic Oceanography recently published a report on the Central Mediterranean migration crises entitled Mare Clausum, which offers an awareness-raising method for the unfolding of the migration crisis at the borders of Malta. In an increasingly integrated world, migration presents opportunities and challenges to communities, institutions, and individuals alike. The mission of the University of Malta Platform for Migration is to offer a dialogical space in which researchers from different academic disciplines can work towards understanding all the evolving aspects of international migration, including that of belonging across generations. The long-term goal is thereby to contribute to an equitable, more sustainable, and more inclusive society that brings benefits to migrants and their families, communities of origin, destination, transit, as well as their sending and receiving countries. The ELUM project supports a platform in data visualization within immersive space for awareness-raising purposes. And I want to finish now with the application of exhibitions. As digital artists, that's very much where we are at home. So ELUM also looks into virtual exhibitions. A case study which I want to show here is the one from the Arts Meet Radical Openness Festival exhibition titled Lost in a Garden of Clouds. Lost in the Garden of Clouds is a virtual exhibition that extends the digital program of the AMRO 2020 of whirlpools and tornadoes. As the festival moved online due to COVID-19, also the planned show had to be made accessible remotely, and this initiated an exciting process of transformations for both the exhibition format and many of the artworks in it. I'll give you a brief video walkthrough of the exhibition.
This land was once ocean. The ocean became land, a city in harmony with people. One day.
The exhibition curators like to call it a virtual show rather than an online exhibition. This is because the charming qualities that the term virtual carries, that it is the being existence in a sense, not in fact. This understanding of virtuality supports the view of the exhibition as something that binds together all the works into a form of narration, which happening also in the mind of the viewer. This is what the exhibition designers, the artists Dua Sai Bao and Yang Mu, aimed at creating for the spectator. A clickable narrative accompanies the viewer into a realm of cloudy interfaces, a labyrinth of online spaces divided into landscape areas. There is no unique and predefined journey, but rather an open narrative between two-dimensional and three-dimensional spaces at the border of the web that one can get lost into and find itself. The works featured here engage with aspects of climate emergency, with the places where natural or urban ecosystems connect with the digital ones, and with the exploitation of natural resources and chemical pollution. The peak enthusiasm screwed up everything, even the very separated cast of the apocalyptic and the integrated one. The two opposing social-technological groups, first labeled by the Italian semiologist Umberto Eco in the 60s in his text Apocalypti e Integrati, 1964. The old-school intellectuals who did not consider the potential of new technologies in their work were apocalyptic, whereas the integrated were the ones who showed a more open interest towards upcoming media culture and were marked as too uncritical from the first group. In an almost perfect conceptual loop, the rising mass culture appropriated and decontextualized Eco's reflection on how academics dealt with the time in which they were living, and the terms labeled the ways in which people approached web conferencing, until COVID-19 came. And here I would like to end the paper by quoting David Lucua, one of the Art Meets Radical Openness organizers. Only time will let the real effects emerge. But thanks to a last naive thought of an integrated one, the two souls are very difficult to separate indeed. I like to imagine that in some corners of the future web, Thanks to this situation, a community found itself in some special digital spaces, and since then can finally have the conversation that they could never have had somewhere else. Thank you very much for having this paper at the conference.